It is the Rotoballer PGA show with yours truly, my main man Spencer at the bottom over here. And we've got a great guest from oddschecker.com, JT Miller, joining us right from his freshly moved in house from college. We are rocking and rolling, moving up in the world, having a good time on the Rotoballer PGA show. How are you, JT?
I'm doing great. Excited for, last tournament of the year. I always look forward to the FedEx Cup a lot. I've gone to St. Jude the last 2 years, actually. So although the playoffs are fun, it's always fun to have this last tournament of the year. And I just love the Windham because I feel like it's just, you get long shots, you get wild cards, you get a lot of randomness in this tournament, and that's what makes it fun. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, a lot of guys trying to make it into the FedEx Cup playoffs. There's only 70 guys going through this year. There's a lot of guys that are in this tournament that are right on the bubble, Spence. So we got some fun names to go. How are you on this fine, wonderful Monday evening, wherever we may find you?
I'm doing well. Byron, you and I were talking about this on, I guess it was technically yesterday. There's been a lot of hard luck outright losses, I feel like, that I've undergone the last couple of months here. I had Oberg at the Scottish. He falls apart. I did have McIntyre late in that I added on Saturday night, so not necessarily the best finish there. Rory at the U.S. Open. Rahm last week with a 4-shot lead with 8 to play. It's been a little frustrating in the outright market to get some of these across the finish line.
Spencer, that was one. It was like flies. Scotty was like, he was the electric tennis racket that we have for like the flies and mosquitoes and stuff. And the closer he got to every single person, they just completely like got tasered out of the leaderboard. Like playing great golf, and then Rory dumps one in the water. Tom Kim 3-putted from 14 feet. Freaking John, made a double on a par 5. He crushes par 5s. To do that was disgusting. It was meltdown city. Xander went back to his old roots as well. Like wanted nothing to do with any intensity at the top of the leaderboard. So Scotty had his, he played incredibly well, like world number 1 does. But the rest of the guys definitely handed it to him on a silver platter. So
hey, his goal was to have fun.
Yeah, and dude, I guess he had a ton of fun, but also relative to the rest of the people, we were definitely not having fun. I think he had a lot more fun than he planned on doing because, the way he started the tournament wasn't quite the Scotty Scheffler we know, but he's almost like that sprinter that won the 100 for the Americans, right? He was last for half the race and then was only first for the final 10 meters. And I think Scotty Scheffler ended up leading this tournament for 1 hole. If you kind of take out the chronological side of things, Tommy was messing stuff up, but once he got through 17, Scotty was in the lead for the only hole that mattered, and it was just incredible. So
isn't that the same? That's the same thing he did at the Players, right?
Yeah. He just knows how to win. He's comfortable with that environment, man. So, any other takeaways you had from the Olympics there, JT?
No, yeah, I really would just say the same thing. So I only had Xander outright. I didn't get too much in the outright market this week just because, I really did think it came down to those guys with the shorter numbers. So I was just going to see what happened, enjoy the golf. I also wasn't going to wake up at 3 a.m. to watch it all. So, but no, when I woke up, Sunday morning, 7 a.m. or whatever, and see Scotty's, 6 back with 7 to play. It's Sunday morning, so I hit the snooze button, went back to bed, and he's leading. It's just, like you said, and then I caught up on everything after that, but just the fact that, you don't see that stalking horse thing happen too much anymore, but to see guys like Rahm and McIlroy just collapse down the stretch there was, I didn't expect both of them to do it, but Scotty, he's got 7 wins this season for a reason. He is legit. And, at the beginning of the week, if you would have asked me, I guess I probably would have said Scotty too. So it wasn't the way I saw it happening, but it happened.
Yeah, and he did it without gaining strokes putting, Spence. So it was incredible. Any other takeaways you have from the good old Olympics? We only have once every 4 years.
The only thing I was going to say is with the putter, and I always run, and I talk about this. It's in my Rotoballer article at the end of every single round. I take the ball striking totals, and then I take the baseline expectation that I have for players around the green and putting. I recalculate the leaderboard to try to figure out, based off of how somebody's striking the ball with their baseline projections on similar surfaces, what would a fair leaderboard be at that moment. that really helps me on a lot of my in-tournament bets that I make for matchups. But it's also an interesting indicator that comes into play for the outright market if you're trying to find somebody that you think can push up the board. On Saturday night, regardless of what Scotty had done or what Scotty hadn't done, I didn't necessarily think he was going to win. I thought it was a really tough catch to get both Xander and Rahm when you're down 4 strokes in that particular position. And you have to shoot a 62 to do it to get past Fleetwood, even with the way that it played out. Fleetwood kind of ends up being the unlucky loser in that position, to where it feels like Fleetwood's been in that spot quite frequently recently, to where he actually plays a better round than you expect and he still doesn't get the victory. But the point that I'm trying to make there is, on Saturday night, Scotty was the projected number 1 player in my model of who should have been in first place. And that's just because the putter had gone ice cold. It was the ice cold version of Scotty that we had gotten before he went on this run recently. So, I'm not surprised with the way that he was striking the ball. All of a sudden, he makes some putts. He shoots a 62 and wins the tournament. But Scotty's incredible. If he's anywhere near the leaderboard, he has a threat to legitimately take down the title. And you unfortunately see it with the sports books. They're never going to give you a true fair price on him. Like, even entering the Sunday round, it was too short at the end of the day. I'm not surprised he won, but if you could have given me 10, 15 points higher, like, that was more of where the true value was.
Yeah.
I just want to say one, like, Spencer, you hit on something that I've been thinking all year. And yeah, like, you're right. Like, the sports books are just not giving you the price we should be getting, but we're never going to get it. And that's why, so like all year I've lived in the betting I've never done the without Scheffler market, but every week I look at stuff just excluding Scheffler from my own brain, and he still burns you. Like, I mean, it's just like, obviously you're never going to take that plus 360, but there's also that hole burning in the back of your head that says, like, yeah, but like, he might win the tournament. So it's rough.
I think I was doing some like backtracking on the shortest odds entering the week. Like, if you've bet someone south of 6-1 all year, if you bet everyone that's shorter than 6-1 all year, you're up on the year. You would have added to your bankroll again this week, even if you bet Xander and Scotty. Slight, Xander luckily being the guy that you kind of missed out on because Scotty returns your stake there. But again, it's working out, man. And it's just such a tough world to bet because you can't bet both of those guys, really. I know I saw some guys doing it, and it is what it is. But before we get into the Windham Championship, I'm rocking some Rotoballer PGA merch here. My big old titty's doing some good repping of the brand over here, and my big old noggin as well. So go check that out on our website over there. As always, use code TOFF or code MANIAC for 10% off, where you can get your premium subscription over at rotoballer.com, because this is the Rotoballer PGA show. I think JT's run off to go buy himself some merch as well, and then he's now back over here. We're ready to rock and roll. So let's get into the Windham. Spencer, high level, what are we kind of just teeing up on here? Just tee off sports for us on some very important stats that you kind of high level looking at.
Here's the one thing I'll say about this tournament, and I think there's a differing viewpoint here between DraftKings and betting, although a lot of the similarities are still going to come in play between those two answers. So when you get a tournament like this where the core and the brunt of the data is extremely manageable in the construction, it's one of the most consistent venues in rollover predictability. We know exactly what we need at this course. You get this 8% increase from 125 to 175 yards versus a standard PGA Tour stop in expectation of approaches. 83% of approach shots occur from 125 plus yards. A lot of the reason of that comes down to 8 par 4 holes that stretch between 400 to 450 yards. So when you get all of those answers, it's like the positive is we have a lot of data to pull from. I feel pretty confident with where my model sits. On the con side of what we're looking at here, though, if we have all this information, that means DFS players have similar information. The sports books are going to make some savvier decisions. And we can see that right now with just how the lack of interest. I think Bet365 and maybe Caesars just put it out, or Bet Rivers, like one of the other. There's been no matchups that have been put out into the space so far this weekend. I think books are running a little bit scared. And for me, with the matchup market being where I am trying to attack with most of my value, we've talked, Byron, you and I on this show for the last 3 months, that the matchup market is not as good as it used to be, unfortunately. And now you're getting these positions to where books are sitting back and saying, well, let's see what the market does on a handful of these players before we figure out who we want to actually pair them against. It just makes it more challenging. And for DFS players, which is what we're primarily talking about here, I think you're going to see a lot of ownership reside in all the same spots. That doesn't mean we can't play those options, but we're going to have a real discussion about where the chalk is, what is good chalk versus bad chalk, and where we can get different in some of these locations.
Let's go, dude. Let's go. JT, what you anything Spencer mentioned that you disagree with, or anything you want to add to what you're looking for from your guys before we dive into our top 10 rankings?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I disagree with anything. Just in my limited, I went through the course earlier. Easy front nine, and then that 10, 11, 12 stretch is tough. So, I mean, obviously you're going to see scoring early, and those guys who take advantage of the front nine are the guys that I expect to, see lighting it up. This is a course that, historically you see, that 16, 18, 20, 22 under. Like, I mean, guys go low here. So you got to make birdies. But it's also avoiding some of that trouble in the back. And I know that par 4 scoring is over par on the back. So it's just like you said, those longer ones, just making sure that your approach is good, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, no, I think we're spot on. As always, got to keep it in the fairway. It makes your life a lot easier if you do. From a birdie perspective, when you're missing, there's, I think, a massive punishment for green regulations if you miss the fairway. Yeah, so it's a short course, but it's still very ticky-tacky in some respects. But let's dive in with my trucker driver hat and drive this show to the promised lands, friends. Alrighty, so number 10 for DraftKings pricing is going to be Minwoo Lee. JT, let's chat about Matt Kuchar. I believe he's 100 to 1, $8,300 somewhere, I think, if I remember off the top of my head. What's Matt Kuchar doing for you?
So I just think he's one of the more fun picks for this week. He's made the FedEx Cup playoffs 17 years in a row, and he pretty much needs, I think it's a top 3 finish to make it this year. He might need a win. I didn't crunch that actual number on it, but he's outside the market. He needs something big to get there. Just some stuff I've seen with him lately. He's been playing really well on approach. His iron play has been really good lately. It's a great number on a veteran who, like I said about the history of this course, like you get those long shots, you get those guys who, haven't won in a while, come up there and just, do the right thing. And I just think that with the way he's been trending this year, he's got one more like burst in him in his PGA Tour career. Like he's got one more, I think he wins another PGA Tour event. I think he makes it down to the stretch. I think Kuchar, fun pick at the number he's at right now.
Okay. I can get behind that. He's also priced quite fairly in the DFS space. So I'm all for it. I just think I prefer him as like have you bet him at all? Did you bet him outright, Matt, JT?
I haven't yet, but I'm going to this week.
Okay. Yeah. I just don't see Kuchar as a guy that's ever going to win. Like, I know you said he's going to win again. I have these like things that I do where I just get inside my own head and I decide he's never going to win a tournament until he does. And then Kuchar's on that list too, because I've had him a few times. Valero couldn't quite get it done. It is what it is. Let's dive into Spencer's guy over here. Thomas Detree over there in the 10 rank spot coming from the Paris Olympics. Spencer, what's going on?
I don't have a massive take on Thomas Detree. I know with him being 10th in my model here, it's going to be the highest of what we're talking about. But recent trending form for him, he's 30 spots better when I took the recent strokes gain total and I geared it towards Windham. A lot of these recent results is what pushed him up. There's a safety rating in my model that absolutely loved him. There's an upside that left a little bit to be desired, and that's just going to come down to some of the weighted proximity numbers that I had him outside of the top 100. But, I think at $8,400 for me, where this comes down to is ownership. I want to see where this ownership ends up landing because I like the safety rating in my model. He's a player that I was trying to figure out, is there a matchup I could find? As I talked about, there's really no matchups right now to look at in general. I saw him against Minwoo, I believe, at Bet365. To me, that's a stay away one way or another. I think they're very similar commodities to one another. Minwoo probably has a little bit more upside if you're looking for that regard, where I would say Detree's safer to make the weekend. But, that's obviously a pretty long answer, Byron, for somebody I don't have a massive take with. But I think he's a fine play for the price right now.
Cool. Yeah, we don't just because he's our top 10 rankings doesn't mean we have to be obsessed with him. We've highlighted the guys that we have ranked typically the highest of the three of us. It's all good. You don't have to play everyone. It's all contextualized. You know, if you're thinking about a DFS option versus a betting option, you know, there's different options and different. I'll say options one more time just because I don't know what I'm doing and my computer's kind of frozen on us. So let's figure out who exactly my guy is. I have the cheat sheet over here. When it shows up, it's probably going to tell you Eric van Rooyen. And there it is. So beautiful. EVI as well. I don't like him as a perfect course fit here, but man, his upside's immaculate. I love him in round 1, round 4 showdown in particular. I think he might be a live commodity when you kind of let the tournament come to you. So that'll be my quick little time saver over there for EVR, a 10th ranked guy, South African boy. Him and Bezzy both finishing inside the top 20, kind of like we expected at the Olympics. Akshay Bhatia is the 9th ranked golfer for DraftKings pricing. And then we've got JT with Jay Spieth over here as a 9th ranked option. Injury be damned. What's going on with JT? Jay Jordan. Jesus. Got all sorts of J's over here.
It's been a rough year for him. There's no doubting that. But I won't lie to you guys and say I still don't think he's a world-class golfer. Like, I don't think Jordan Spieth's going to fall off the face of the earth and he's never going to do anything big again. He's 63rd right now in the FedEx Cup rankings, so he's in for St. Jude, and I don't see him falling out of it. But he's still got some work to do for the BMW. I know there's supposed to be some rough weather early in the week. Jordan is, you know, it's like people always make those jokes about like it's fun to watch Jordan Spieth shoot par because he does it in the wildest way. But, you know, with bad conditions, I think he can do something. He is a very good wedge player and putter whenever he's playing his game. And, you know, if there's anybody who can roll the rock when he's hot, it's Jordan. So getting a big name like this at a decent price, I like him where he's at. And I think he makes the cut. I think he does something this week.
Yeah, I always say you want to ride the roller coaster with Jordan Spieth on your own. You never want to have everyone else throwing up on you there either. So that's kind of my rule, and I think this week it'll be a lonely ride for most of us. Spencer, number 9, Ben Silverman.
Yeah, that's
from the Olympics, right? No, would have.
That's the wild name in my model. Like, it feels like every single week we've had one of these, and some of them have produced better than others. But Silverman's quietly made 8 cuts in a row. 7 of those have finished inside the top 40. I thought he was the most mispriced option on the board, where the market hasn't necessarily caught up to him. I don't know if he can win the golf tournament. I did bet him at 175 to 1. He's probably better as a top 40 sort of play. If I could find him in a matchup, that's another route I would want to go. But for DraftKings here, I can't imagine he's going to be extremely popular. And at 6,900, I'm going to be very aggressively overweight to Silverman this week.
I saw Ben Silverman warming up at the John Deere Classic, and his warm-up routine is rigorous. If anything, he will definitely be warm when he tees up on the first hole. Spencer, love that call, especially a very solid price. You know, you're getting a solid value there for someone that you got ranked quite highly. Maverick McNeely, I don't think he's another guy. He's not going to win a golf tournament. Or when he does, I will sure as shit not be on him. But I do like his price. I do like his ability to flirt with winning tournaments until he pops outside the top 5 like he usually does. But I love his driver. I love his chipping and his short game. Yeah, I think his putting is going to be phenomenal at a week where you really have to roll the rock well, like JT mentioned there with Jay Spieth. JT Spieth, we got all of the stuff going on. The chat can't even get it right either. It's a good time. They're throwing up all over the chat as well. We love the chat over here on Rotoballer PGA Show. Number 8's my boy from the John Deere Classic, where I saw him winning live. Davis Thompson for 8th on the DraftKings thing and going from one Davis to the other. Cameron Davis is your number 8 ranked golfer, JT. What's up with him?
So 3 straight finishes inside the top 30. Obviously, everybody remembers his win at the Rocket Mortgage. Good young golfer. The stat that really stood out to me for him is since 2019, he's gaining on average a stroke to the field with the putter here. He's a guy that, you know, if it's muddy and the course is rough, I think that he's a mutter. I think he can do all right in it. And yeah, just like it'd be one thing if he just gained a stroke last year, but 4 years with the average of 1 per round. I like it. I think he's one of those guys that, like I said, if he's rolling it well, he'll be there.
Yeah, He's a great course fit. He typically thrives on these shorter courses. I've bet him at 45-1 as well. Dropped that in the Rotoballer Discord earlier this morning. I think he's a good option. And he typically gets hot right around this time of the year. My guy is Akshay Bhatia, number 8th ranked dude. I've also bet him at 45-1. Drop that in the Discord. All that jazz. I'll say Discord one more time just to say Discord. And I think Akshay hasn't typically played the best golf at this venue, but he's driving the ball sensationally with that mini driver right now. And I think at this kind of venue, you don't need tons of distance. You just need to do what he does well and keep it in the fairway. And he's typically done that very, very well lately. He almost won, I think, the Rocket Mortgage when Cam Davis did. And, he 3-putted there. So that was tough scenes. I think he's looking for some redemption. He's very talented. I think he's definitely got what it takes to win this thing. Also priced quite fairly as the 9th ranked guy in DraftKings. So we like that a lot. Brian Harmon sitting in the number 7 spot for DK. And then JT has got a Brian Harmon as well. We'll probably chat about Brian Harmon coming up here shortly. And then Spencer, you've got C. Bez, who I couldn't quite fit his full name in here without requiring a magnifying glass. So we're just going with the nickname here for C. Bez in your number 7 spot in the model.
My projection of what's going to happen here, and I've already seen it forming in the space to some regard already. A lot of these players that are coming over from the Olympics are going to get a reduced ownership, in my opinion. And Bezuidenhout is one of those prime examples to where the market doesn't really ever want to play him on a good week. He's a name that somebody might find more inclined to put into a build. He may become a little bit more popular when he's in that $7,000 section, but there's a typical aversion that comes into play when he gets into this 8,000 or above range. So you add that to him coming over from the Olympics here. I think he's going to be less than 5, 6, 7% from what I'm seeing right now. Maybe that trickles up. There is a lot of ownership that's next to him though. But the thing that I liked about him most, and Byron, you and I have talked about this quite frequently, where there's a lack of aggression that comes from his game. And that's the most concerning thing. But when you get one of these shorter venues, all of a sudden his upside starts ramping up. Number 1 in my model in weighted strokes gain total, specifically for this course. He's inside the top 10 in recent strokes gain total when I ran it just for the Windham. That's over the past 24 rounds. And then if you look at his short game ability, I know the big takeaway is going to be at the Olympics that he did everything with the putter. And I certainly understand that being a concern. But when you look at the expected putting and around the green performance, there's only 4 players in this event that are a better projection than him. Interestingly enough, Maverick McNeely is one of them that you just talked about. It's that profile, though, with Bezuidenhout where there's going to be no ownership around him. I love them in the outright market. I wish that price would have been a little bit higher than it was. And the interesting thing is it opened at 45-1 and it got plummeted down to like 30-1 at a lot of these shops. And to me, that's kind of the big indicator of where the projection is on the market with him right now. And I'm going to bet on the upside with Bezuidenhout, which is something I don't normally do in these spots, but I took him at 45-1. I really like him for DraftKings. That's what's going to probably be no ownership. And I love the number 1 projection weighted strokes gain total that he had in my model.
Yeah, I think he's a great course fit, just Spence. And I think, in this kind of field, he should thrive quite nicely. I've got Cameron Davis. We've already chatted about him. And number 6 is Jordan Spieth on the DraftKings slate. I feel like that's quite the name recognition value going on over there, despite what JT mentioned, Spieth having a bit of a tough time. JT's got Aaron Rai in the 6th spot. We'll chat about him shortly. Spencer's got Siwoo Kim in the 6th spot. We'll chat about him shortly. And in my 6th spot, I have got Minwoo Lee, who, oh boy, I don't even know how this guy does it. He was also one of the few dudes after round 1 at the Olympics. The final 3 rounds, if he did like a reverse live format, the final 3 rounds of the tournament, he would have like finished inside the top 5, I think. So he really kind of threw his name in the mix there with some good comeback form. But I can't say, I'm going to kind of just do the Thomas Dietrich thing there and just say he's inside the model at number 6. His short game's immaculate. His volatility is ridiculous. I think when I looked at his strokes gained average, it was 0.7. But if you take a look at his median of the last 100 rounds, it's like 1.5 strokes per round. So like his bottom end range is ridiculously poor. And I think that's what my model is really taking into account here, is the fact that he's just so sporadic and volatile. So depending on ownership, I might jump in, but he's typically quite a popular golfer. Cameron Young, number 5 for DK. Eric Cole, number 5 for JT. We'll get to Eric Cole as well. And then Spencer, let's chat about Luke Clanton in the number 5 spot there for you.
I mean, honestly, I'd rather pass it over to JT to talk about Eric Cole and bring up Eric Cole for myself in a second. The problem with Clanton in my model is it's such limited data. I don't necessarily plan on playing him this week. We can see where the ownership ends up landing with him, but I don't necessarily want to get burnt in this spot where it's such limited data at the end of the day. There are some negative marks inside of my sheet for expected around the green and putting. That's the concern at the end of the day with it. Like, it's a great ranking. It's also based off of 16 rounds in my model. So yeah, exactly. It is what it is.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's the thing. If there's low ownership, we can go there. If it's high, leave him alone. He's very talented. Maybe this golf course not the perfect fit for him. Cameron Young comes in at number 5 for me. I love him as a DFS option as well. I've often said his first win's going to come at a major, but we'll kind of dance around that ownership as well. He's number 5 spot. I kind of do think he fits this bill quite nicely. I bet him in my top 40 4-leg parlay. He's got that consistency that we're looking for, especially in a field like this. Whether or not he gets across the line, that remains to be seen. Number 4 is Siwoo Kim on the DraftKings slate there without a top 5 this year, so don't know what they're doing over there. But Ben Griffin, JT, he's your 4-man. So hit us with the Griffin.
So it's really I think it's a spectacular course fit for him. So he's coming off back-to-back missed cuts, which we don't love. But he finished solo 4th here in 2022. And then just looking at the strokes gained over the last 24 rounds. So relative to the field, he's actually leads the field putting in Bermuda grass, and he strokes gained 3rd on approach. So like we talked about earlier, the approach is such a massive factor here. And you expect people to run up the score here. So if this turns into your average wedge and putt contest, Ben Griffin could be there. And with the way that he's been playing, like relatively with, Bermuda grass with the wedges, shit like that, I think he could make some noise. Now, back-to-back missed cuts, I could wake up Saturday morning and he's not even on the board. But if he makes the cut, I think he can contribute.
I think he typically gets stronger as the week goes along. And I think if Ben Griffin doesn't know who his dad is, maybe he can start his family tree search on the Matt Kuchar side of things. I feel like they're very similar in stature, and both of them entering with phenomenal iron play this week. Brian Harman, Spencer, he's your 4 guy. You like him in the 4 spot?
I like Brian Harman a lot. I just very quickly want to talk about Ben Griffin. Ben Griffin was the first name that did not make my outright card. Can't bet everybody at the end of the day. I think there is a ton to like about Ben Griffin. There is a realistic chance at that price that was out there, and it's still out there right now. I believe he's one of the better values on the board. So keep him in mind. Didn't make my outright card. I'm going to play him for DraftKings. Have no problems with anybody who wants to bet him. With Brian Harman, for me, high upside, lower floor. He's the 2nd ranked player in my model for projected win equity. That's below the guy who's going to be in my number 1 spot when we get there, which I guess if you want to put him up, since I'm not talking about him anyway, Sungjae Im is the number 1 player in my model for projected win equity. Not necessarily a shock there. Brian Harman's number 2 in that category. That's including being 2nd in my model in weighted strokes gained total and 3 additional top 5 marks. So my model seems to believe that if he puts the pieces together, that he can work himself up the leaderboard in a fashion that rivals everybody, exceeds everybody, and rivals Sungjae at the end of the day.
He's the 2023 champion golfer of the year, so we don't disrespect the short man. He's got what it takes at times, and I feel like this venue definitely fits his skill set. Davis Thompson as well. I think he's just been playing such phenomenal golf, especially on the short game front. I think we can continue to kind of expect that from him going forward. I don't know if this is the greatest course fit ever, but maybe if everyone believes that and we kind of just rely on the absolute talent that he's provided us lately, this guy's balling out right now and he's playing some really good golf. I think he typically also thrives in these weaker fields. So we'll see what Davis Thompson can do for me in the 4 spot there. I do like him from a DFS perspective. Won't be getting to him in any betting capacity. But I did see someone mention that I did beat Seabears growing up. I did. It was like in high school. It was way before he got good. But I have a Seabears W on my resume. It's written in pencil and it's faded fast because it's so long ago. But that, in fact, is a reality, friends. So that's what you get over here. We get some supreme expertise along with some good-looking boobies. JT's got Sungjae as the 3rd dude over there. And then let's get into Spencer's 3 guy. Aaron Rai is your first of the 3 guys at the top of the board for you.
Yeah, I guess Rye would technically be the option 2B to the Ben Griffin discussion. When he opened at 40-1 over on FanDuel, I gave a really hard thought process into trying to go down that route because there's a bunch of data points in my model that are pushing him in a territory that the recent play is a lot better than the long-term expectation. And even if you look at the production that he's provided this season, like strokes gained total, strokes gained tee to green, those are areas of my model that he is looking like a legitimate golfer, like a legitimate top 20 player in the world. You look specifically here, number 1 in my model. I keep talking about the recent strokes gained total that's geared towards the Windham. Number 1 in my model there, number 1 on easy scoring courses, number 1 this season in strokes gained total when comparing it to this field. I ended up not going down this route because one of the things for me, at least for the outright market, I think he's going to probably be
very owned.
my guess is Sungjae will be the first highest owned guy. Aaron Rye will probably be the second highest owned guy. What ended up pushing me off of him is it is very important with the way that I built my model, which is impressive that Rye got up to number 3 with the 40% weight that I put for putting in the weighted strokes gained total to begin with. But you have to make putts here. And we have seen a similar blueprint to where every single player who has won at this course, and even a Lucas Glover, who's not one of your prototypically good putters, he had a little stretch there where he was making putts, and he also had an expectation in his model, or in my model, where he went from the 130th ranked putter in the field, and you throw him in these similar fast Bermuda surfaces, and all of a sudden he jumped inside the top 65 in expectation. The problem with Rye in my model, which would be, I guess, the one word of concern that I would at least throw out there if I'm trying to temper expectations ever so slightly here. He's 67th in my model in expected strokes gained putting on any generic course. On this specific venue, he's 90th. My concern is, does he make enough putts to actually win this contest? If he does make putts, the rest of the profile looks immaculate. So I think the question you need to ask yourself is, do you think the putter is going to be closer to what we've seen recently, where he's inside the top 15 over his last 24 rounds in this field? Or do you expect a regression to take place on a surface that has technically been a negative surface for him historically? I don't know what that answer is. It was enough of a reason for me not to bet him in the outright market, though.
Yeah. I will double down on what you're saying there, Spence, and say I will be betting him in the top 40 market at minus 134. I feel like the putter can do whatever it wants, and the ball striking tee to green aspect of his game will be just fine for that top 40 market. It's where he has typically thrived. I have Mackenzie Hughes over here. I've ramped up the around the green stuff. I've ramped up the putting. Mackenzie Hughes, friends, is on a putting, like he's putting like Cam Smith right now. And you know how I go about Cam Smith. You know, I'm a big fan of that stuff. And I think any given week, he's got that upside. You know, his safety in my model is quite putrid, but the upside there, especially with the putting, especially with those 75th percentile putting stats of his, he can just dominate any kind of venue. We're going to expect him to kind of struggle on the ball striking front, but he can chip it in from anywhere. He can putt it in from anywhere. Mackenzie Hughes is your guy if you're looking for a volatile option. He's somehow made his way into the top 3 for me, and I don't mind it. You know, I'm a fan of Mackenzie Hughes every now and then. I think this week might be the week to DFS him there. I love JT, your guy, in the number 2 hole. I've bet Billy Horschel. Tell us why I bet Billy Horschel this week.
Okay, so he's 27th right now in FedEx Cup. So if he plays well, he's on the Tour Championship, but you can't slack off these next 3 weeks. Tied for 4th here last year. Spectacular form off of, you know, I mean, excluding the U.S. Open, second place at Open and a T8 at the PGA. I think it's just been a really good year for him, especially for a guy that like 2-3 years ago, he was a President's Cup guy and a guy, one of the best golfers for the American team. Then he kind of backtracked a little bit, but now he's kind of trending back up. Plus 1.3 strokes gained putting here per round since 2019. And he has 4 top 6 or better finishes here since 2016. The biggest thing for me, so I'm a little less data driven on some of this stuff than Spencer is, but what I'll say about Billy that I saw, like his demeanor in the Open Championship, like if you watched him play, he looked like he had it again, and he looked like he like believed he had it again. And like you said, in a weaker field like this, where Billy Horschel is one of the bigger names in it, I mean, the guy's been around forever, but he's won big tournaments. I mean, he's won the BMW, he's won the Tour Championship, he's won the Memorial. This guy can play. And I mean, a little short at 25-1 is I think what he was at a little bit ago. Yeah, 22 right now on DK. But he's my favorite on those guys inside 5-1 right now, or 50-1 right now.
Yeah. And he's also won these big tournaments, but he's also won the Corellas, like blue collar Billy is not afraid to get dirty with the boys at the bottom of the barrel. So I'm a big fan of him this week, and you make a great case for him in that department. Spence, anything to add to the Billy Horschel, or you want to get to your guy in the 2-hole?
I like Billy Horschel. I agree with what JT said. A lot of the data is trending in the right direction. If we do want to talk about the statistical profile of it, great on Donald Ross courses inside the top 15 of my model. Also inside the top 6 when I ran the category for weighted strokes gained total on easy scoring plus Bermuda scoring. There's a lot to like about him. Like the one thing that hurt him in my model was the proximity numbers. But I also think you can look at the course history here with a golfer that looks to be in form right now. For me, he's one of my favorite. It's a little bit of a different answer than I guess you guys are giving. He's probably one of my safer targets on the board where I think he has like a legitimate chance in matchups to beat anybody who he's going to be paired against. He's a realistic top 20 target also if you want to look in that market. Like that's probably where I would be trying to go if I was trying to make a placement bet on him.
I love it. Lots of good stuff to say about Billy Horschel, who's not even in my top 10, but it does show that he's kind of providing some good recent form, which my model isn't necessarily taking that much into account right now. Spence?
Really quickly, but where do you have him in your model?
Ooh, that's a good question. Go ahead and let me pull him up here. Billy Horschel. He is 18th and 14th, for upside. So I've been running some longer metrics again this year, and it's been working out quite nicely. So I do know he's playing good golf right now, so I'm okay maniacing that into there a little bit.
No, it makes sense. And like some of the proximity data that my model doesn't like about him, if I ran it from a shorter duration of time, it would help it a lot. He's 13th in my model. He's inside of the top 10 for safety. If I went through and did my sort of overrides with it, I'm sure I could get him easily into the top 6. It wouldn't be that hard for me to go that route. So Byron, when I get into this Eric Cole play here,
oh boy,
you might want to put your fingers in your ears and just like not listen to this. I know that you drafted Eric Cole in your season-long league, and I know Eric Cole has been really nothing short than an unmitigated disaster so far this season. He wins Rookie of the Year last year. Nothing seems to have gone right. I'm going to make a bold prediction on this show. I don't normally do this. If Sungjae Im does not win this golf tournament, I'm going to say Eric Cole ends up capturing the title here, and this is going to be the spot of his victory. There is so much that I like about Eric Cole from a statistical standpoint. If you look at what he does inside of my model, and I think there's one key stat that I really want to pinpoint here. I'll give you a couple, though. 4th in my model for weighted strokes gained total. 7th when faced with a Donald Ross venue. Here is the specific metric that I liked more than anything else, because there is an example here that I can use for why that some of these baseline expectations will not be what they should be for this specific venue. So he's 17th for expected proximity. I know that rank is not going to sound overly encouraging when you hear, all right, 17th place. There's a lot of players you've talked about. There's a lot of these names that are a lot better on the data front, what we're discussing here. When you compare that 17th place rank, and this is the exact answer I gave about Thagala at the Fortinet last season, when he can have, or players like that can have this expected approach metric that far exceeds what their baseline is, a lot of times that starts pushing me in a direction where I start becoming intrigued. And we know on the flip side of that Cole's driver can sometimes carry a problem, which I'll get to in a second. But 17th place here in his projected proximity number, 54th on any generic course. You add that to 135th place grade that he had for GIR percentage. Those numbers all of a sudden from the 54th and 135th become 17th and 15th. Those are the two most significant jumps for a course-specific answer that I have in my sheet. And then if you look for the actual driving numbers, he's a golfer that's outside of my top 100 as his baseline grade with the driver. He all of a sudden jumps inside the top 50 for me here. I thought at 70-1, he was the best value in the outright market. Like, we can talk about Sungjae being the most projected high-end winner of this tournament. I can talk about why my model thinks Harmon is the second name there. The one difference that comes into play is whether we're talking them or we're talking Aaron Rye, even who's starting to move up. Cole is 70-1, where most of these other options are in like the 16 to 30-1 range. So I thought Cole was the best value. This feels like the prototypical course that Cole would get a victory at. And the numbers in the data are just trending in that capacity right now. I was a little bit surprised to see how popular he was, and maybe that's because of the recent form that we've started to get, even though it's been a hodgepodge of the statistical data of it. I think Eric Cole wins this tournament, though. That's going to be my prediction here.
Let me touch on that real quick, just because I really like all the points you just made. So, like you said, like Rookie of the Year last year, it's been a really underwhelming year for him. But Rookie of the Year at 35 years old. Okay, like we never expected him to be a bomber. We never expected him to, carry the weight in some of these more exciting categories. But he's coming off T6 and T7 in his last two finishes. So, like you said, obviously the season's kind of been a wash, but lately he's been playing well. He contended here last year. And then you just look at the guys who win the Windham Championship. Like you got a Kevin Kisner, you got a Lucas Glover. Eric Cole fits that brand of who you expect to go out and win the Wyndham. Having that 5, so it's lower than you, but I agree. I definitely expect his name to be up there this week.
I love him. I love him too. He's not in here because he's had a really putrid year, but I think he's starting to really start finding his form now. And you boys you said more than enough. I don't have to say anything about Eric Cole. I think he's a great play this week. I might say as much about Shane Lowry as I have to say about Eric Cole right now. I don't know what he's doing, number 2. He's played really good golf. He's consistent as heck. He played quite nicely at the Open. After he said he needed to roll the ball back because he couldn't bunt a driver onto the green on the same hole that Siwoo Kim hit a 3-iron into the hole for an ace. You got some mental stuff you got to deal with there, Shayna. You're battling yourself and the guys you're playing with. I'm not a big fan. I don't know if he can get to -20, -22, whatever we're going to need this week. So he's there. It's a safe play, probably a cash game play if you're thinking about it that way. But I don't think he's going to, do the greatest things here. Unsurprisingly, we've got Sung Jae Im number 1 on the DraftKings slate there. And JT, your number 1 guy is Nicky, oh, you're so fine, Højgaard. So tell us what he's doing in your ace spot.
Well, if any of you guys watch football, I'll consider this is like a wheel route out of the backfield, okay? There's a good chance a linebacker hops on it, but if he doesn't, he's taking it to the end zone. Højgaard has a lot of upside for me here in the sense if he's coming off a phenomenal week at the Olympics. I know that travel is a factor, but he's young, so I'm not going to worry about that too much. The big thing for me right now is he is 80th in the FedEx Cup standings. So he's one of those guys that could easily make that jump with a really strong finish. And he's one of the guys that I watched a lot this week. And I just think that he's a spectacular young golfer. And if form is any sort of a real thing, I think that what he's bringing in out of last week is just a boatload of confidence at 50 to 1, I think is what I saw last. That's a great price for a guy coming off, obviously he didn't medal, but that's a really good feel-good finish for you last week. And then, like you said, in a weaker field, I still think Højgaard's a top 10 name in this field, at least in the modern golf kind of game right now. He's a Ryder Cup guy. He's a young guy. I think Højgaard can do something, and I like the price a lot.
I will add to your, we're not the thrilledest about his travel. Hey, when he showed up to the West Coast at Torrey Pines, guy played 9 holes of the possible 36 that he could have practiced on before the tournament began. Finished second. That was his best finish on the PGA Tour this year. I think, maybe he brings a bit of that form across the pond again. He has been really, way below his baseline on the PGA Tour versus what he can get up to on the DP World Tour. He's been sensational over there. So I really, really fancy that bid there for you. And 50 to 1 for someone as prodigiously winning as he has done in the past, I think is a great call there, JT. So I love it. We want to dive into some DFS guys down the board, or do we want to chat some? I'm very curious because you said, JT, that you don't do too much statistical analysis when it comes to, or it's hard to kind of match Spencer. And then, I'm not even in Spencer's tier, and I consider myself a nerd when it comes to the numbers. So tell us a little bit about your how your betting process goes, because I think you're an incredible capper across all the sports. So how do you bring what you've done in other sports to the golf?
Well, first of all, I appreciate the compliment. Thank you. I will say, so, I've been handicapping professionally now for 4 years. So I cover baseball, football, hockey, golf. I think 6, because I do double on football, so that's 6 altogether. And golf was one of my later ones. I got into golf 2 years ago, and I really started betting it last year. I say I'm not as statistical because I'm not like a model guy. Now, with how much I've betted the last 2 years, I do think I am going to look into getting into at least a model for my own mental for next year. But I handicap golf like I handicap the rest. I watch them and I pay attention to the guys. I pay attention to data golf and a lot of the statistics I see, and I do a lot of course history research, and I do recent form research, and then I dive into the strokes gained stuff. So I'll say I'm not looking at all 120 guys in the field every week, or 140 guys in the field every week, or whatever it is. But there's names that stand out to me, and then as I do the research on like what a guy would have to do well to do there, then I find some of the other names. So like right off the bat, guys like Højgaard and Billy Ho had my attention just right off the bat. But then once you look at some of the other stuff, like that's why guys like Aaron Cole and Ben Griffin really stood out to me this week. So I would have a more unorthodox approach to golf betting than guys like you guys do, but it's definitely something that I really thoroughly enjoy, and it's been really fun to get more and more into it lately. I think my next big step is, making sure I'm in on it every single week. I definitely, with you say like, late spring, you got baseball starting and NHL playoffs going, and I may miss a week or two of golf. And that's something next year I want to make sure I'm not doing. But I really love this summer stretch of golf. And then, this stretch down the end with the Tour Championship, I really enjoy. So,
yeah, it's interesting. And I think those weeks in particular where you have like graduated leaderboards and things, a model can get a little tough to use, And I think just to wrap back on what you mentioned about not having a model, I think a model is fine to have. I know Spence really relies on it the most, but his is exceptional, and it's what he's done often. I think you can use it as a starting point, just like, am I thinking the right way? Like, why is this guy popping up? Why don't I feel like he should be there? Like it kind of gives you a reason to kind of investigate a little bit, and I think it's quite interesting. Spence, do you have any takeaways from what JT had to say?
No, I think he brought up a lot of good points. And like, even if you look at the Eric Cole discussion, like we both came to the same answer, and some part of it being the same way, some part of it not being the same way with it. But, I will say, Byron, which is not a positive answer here, but I've probably been, for the entirety of when I've been releasing content at Rotoballer, you are correct. I am very a stickler to what the model says. I wish the last month I would have been a little bit more of a stickler to what the model said. I would have had a Xander Schauffele Open Championship victory. There's a couple things that could have come into play from there where I had value that I didn't get on those numbers at the right time with it. But, I think it's important for anybody out there that's listening, like the advice I always give is whether you have a model that is extremely sophisticated, that is giving you to the very 10th of the percent, the 100th of the percent, wherever we're going there, where the value is, like that's great. But, there are simplified models out there where you can still get a better understanding. I know it's always the discussion of how much does data come into play? How much should we be looking at the data? Well, the answer is at the core of it, it's a lot. How you decipher that data is a little bit different. Do you want to look at more of course history? Do you want to look at current form? Do you want to take all of it into account, which is what I do in my model, to where I have the brunt percentage of my model is a statistical output. I then take current form and course history and I mold it all into one answer. And, Byron, you and I have talked about this a million times. Not every single model is built specifically for what we're looking at. Like if we want to look for outrights, we're going to look at some of the more volatile statistics, some of the more upside statistics in our model. If we're looking for safety, we're going to then go to those safety routes of how does a player play on this course? How does a player project to play recently? What are some of the recent trending data marks inside of a build? And you take all that together, and that's how I try to figure out where is my value compared to the sports book. But I think at the end of the day, for me, my research is always a little bit longer in the duration of time that I'm using than most people. And, you know, when it goes well, it looks good. And when it doesn't, I end up on much different results than most people do in some of these spots. I will say this week, it seems like all my names are the chalk of the chalk. So I'm going to have to figure out a way for DFS to get different there. But numbers are very important. I just want everybody to just, you know, do as much as you can with the research process.
Spencer, it's my first time on the show with you, so I do want to ask you something because you brought it up a couple of times. Can you just real quick dive into what's your safety? What is safety in your model? Like, what does that come down to? I'm just curious.
Safety for me is taking course history and current form at a higher percentage weight than I would when I run it from an overall rank perspective, or if I was to run it from an upside perspective. If I run things from an upside perspective, I'm trying to take a statistical build, throw away some of like what we know and what the sports books know about what a player has done at a course, what a player has done recently. A lot of that gets baked into the number. And that's for the upside answer there. Safety is a lot of, these are like Thomas Dietrich for me is a player that is super safe. There's a couple examples. Billy Horschel is an example that is super safe. Cameron Young has a safety rating in my model. Cameron Davis. These are names that I feel very comfortable for DraftKings at the right ownership percentage, feeling like I'm not going to get burned if I'm putting them into a build. But on some of those names, I end up worrying about the upside if we're talking outright markets. So I'm always trying to weigh this between where is the upside versus where is the safety. The safety targets are more of my cash games, head-to-heads, things of that nature. The upside targets become the large field GPPs, the outright tickets when I have value compared to the numbers. It's a very extensive process, but hopefully that answers it, JT.
No, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And, you know, upside and safety is a very interesting concept because I've just recently got into medians and means, you know, like with Minwoo, like a mean for safety, an average is important because you don't want his 50th percentile. You want all of his rounds because you want his worst round to be a solid round, and it's not. So that's kind of like a Minwoo situation where you can see, okay, mean versus median, it changes his whole thing. It's the same data. It's all strokes gained total, but just how you parse that information differently can really change your viewpoint, you know. And then for my upside, I use 75th percentile. So like your 25th best round of the last 100, that's what it's pulling in strokes gained for. I don't want your middle of the road stuff. I don't want your average. I don't want your bad rounds weighing that down. I want 75th upside stuff, you know, like what can you do at your best? Is it good enough to win, you know, versus the other guy's best stuff? So just in a safety and upside metric, you can have so many different avenues to get there. And I think it's interesting because there's DFS, there's outrights, and then there's top 40s. You know, I think all three of those require a different model, essentially, if you are doing it, or a different thought process or a different research process if you are getting into that. So
for sure, there too, because sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was done.
Well, yeah, like all of my the extent of what I've done over the last 2 years is I've really, really gotten into top 40. I like top 40 a lot because there's just, I mean, especially in, events like this, you got to be a little more like, you know, you're looking more at the numbers because not all of your top 40s are so greatly priced. But like top 40, top 20, I don't like top 10 that much. Top 5 is not fun unless you're betting Scotty Scheffler. And then I like outrights. But top 40s are like, I had like top 40s at like the Open and top 40s at, you know, some of these bigger tournaments when the fields are so deep. Like I had Jordan Spieth top 40 at the Open, and I got him at the start of the week at minus 110. Mm-hmm. If you look at his history at the Open, I mean, it doesn't matter his recent form. It's just the guy just plays well there. So like you said there, like that's where you can really find some really good numbers on those top 40s. Top 40s are a really fun market to bet.
It is. And it's even been fun, JT. I've been doing like because I was looking at the pricing today, and for like an Aaron Rai, his top 40 number should be a totally different to the graduated version of his top 5 number, but they're giving him the same pricing. You know, like Aaron Rai's historically over the last 12 months or so, not been a top 5 guy, he's been a top 40 guy, but they're using his outright number to generate the top 40. And sometimes you can find these like variations in these guys' profiles. And then I love, you know, kind of nitpicking the different placement markets out there. So it's
Aaron Rai is not a guy that I love, but there's no denying how consistently he's been playing great golf this year. So yeah, what did you say you got him at 130?
Yeah, minus 134 with ties paid in full for a top 40 is like money.
As
You
soon
know,
as
it's
I'm
like,
off this, I think I'm gonna be betting that. So
yeah, it's safe. You know, that's what he does. Is like whether or not he sucks at putting, it's still going to be golden. So it's a fun time, and I think let's dive into some of these DFS ranges after we get the mini goats. Yeah, the most important thing is contest selection as well. Like if you're playing a single entry, you might even run a different model for that versus a GPP. You know, I think safety versus upside can play a part in that as well. So trying to figure that out. I've been doing that a lot with Scotty Scheffler events where I'll just do single entries and 3 entry maxes in the Scotty ones because it's hard to find the other 5 guys at Scotty's price in a smaller contest. But the more people you add to the contest, the more the randomization of the rest of the 5 lineups will maybe give you those key 5 guys, you know, just based off the law of averages. So it's really interesting, and it's been a fun getting to know your process, man. Thank you for sharing all of that with us.
Byron,
So,
very quickly
yeah.
before we move on, do you have access to Bet365?
I do.
So
Not under my name though. It's an alias, but yes.
Of course, that's the best way to do it. There is an Aaron Rye in the finishing position market at Bet365 that would be 42nd or better at minus 120, and that also pays ties there.
Oh,
on that
please. I mean, it's getting 2 extra places and better odds. So that's interesting. Exactly. That's the thing about betting these guys is like the graduated market gets him to a worse odds than he should be. But, you know, if they just strictly place the top 40, you can find an edge there. So that is very interesting. Thanks for that, Spence. I'll have to go and find that for sure. Let's dive into the 8K range, and we do a gourmet or cray thing here where in the 8K, I'm going to ask both of you for your gourmet play, the one that you're going to order, the one that you want lots of, the one that you're willing to pay up for. And then I want some crays. I want guys that you don't think are going to play well. I want guys that might be overpriced, guys that you just don't think are worth the value. So Spencer, I will start with you. Who's your gourmet play in the 8s?
I mean, I've talked about Christian Bezaid, how I'll probably go towards him just because I don't think anybody's going to deploy him into lineups. The one name, though, that I at least want to mention before I get out of here, because he was one of the big win equity climbers for me. Like we want to go back to the safety answer. My model doesn't necessarily love him in some of these matchups, but when I jumped into safety or into upside, he became one of the top 7 projected win equity candidates for me in my sheet. That would be Keegan Bradley. So I think Bradley for GPP contests leaves a lot of upside into a build if you're trying to get different along with the Bezaid answer. And even with what JT talked about with Højgaard a second ago, if we want to talk about Bezaid or Højgaard or any of these names, I think any of the players that are coming from the Olympics are going to have less ownership naturally. And that to me is where I want to try to get unique and different, because if the market wants to overreact to this narrative of them traveling over, and I'm not saying it's necessarily the most ideal answer in the world, but everybody handles it differently. You know, for Sungjae Im specifically, I'm happy that he didn't play the Olympics because we've seen the travel affect Sungjae in the past. So, like, I'm happy to see when Sungjae opened at 17-1 in the market that he hadn't played the Olympics and didn't have to move over. But for the rest of these guys, if we're talking DraftKings ownership, I think you're going to get a discount almost across the board. And that might be a way to just differentiate builds from the very start.
Love it, dude. Absolutely love it. JT, have you been doing, I know I didn't mention this to you before the show, so I sprung this one up on you a little bit, but are you comfy kind of rolling through a few ranges here and kind of letting us know what you like?
Are you talking DFS ranges?
Yeah.
So I'm going to be honest. I've never done DFS.
Okay. That's perfect, dude. That's totally fine. We can kind of just brush over them, me and Spence, quickly, and then just chat about anything else that we want to. You know, this is the show that we do with the guests. So, Spence, you want to just rattle off some of your favorite plays down the board, and then we can kind of dive back to what we're here for?
I think there's a lot of value. What ends up happening on these boards for DraftKings a lot of times is you get these situations to where, you know, we talk about these boards, Byron, and it's usually pretty standard for the most part with my model and where the pricing actually is. This was one of those weeks where I did have a little bit more of a deviation compared to what I normally would. I think it's very interesting, Byron, that you got Shane Lowry up to the number 2 spot, because while my model does not love him, I will say this. From the matchups that have entered the market and any of the outright numbers that I've seen move, everything looks extremely sharp on Shane Lowry. He is a massive favorite against Aaron Rye. He is a massive favorite against Brian Harman. Those are 2 of my favorite plays on the board. And for him to drift out into that minus 140 range at the 2 spots where it opened, that means something, and it will mean something on the back end of my model when I put some of those movements into account, because if you can get that sort of a move against 2 top 5 players for me, you're going to end up skyrocketing on the Wednesday version of my model here. But what ends up happening for me is like, I thought the $9,000 range for the most part had a lot of overpriced commodities. And, some of those overpriced commodities we can make decisions on. If nobody wants to play Jordan Spieth, we can have a discussion on what ownership percentage does Spieth become playable? At what ownership percentage does Minwoo Lee become playable? Like, these are names that we can discuss, but for the most part, like, Harman is a value for me in the $9,000 range. There's a handful of values that I have in the 8s, but a lot of the value got pushed into this like $7,000 and $6,000 section. So it would be options like Eric Cole, Mac Meisner, Brendan Todd, Ben Griffin, Max Grazerman, JJ Spawn. If you want to get into the $6,000 range, it's Ben Silverman, which I've already discussed. I thought Jacob Bridgman was an interesting play. Like, there's a lot of players of all those names I just mentioned that are legitimate top 35 projected win equity candidates for me. And a lot of those names are priced outside of that section of the grade. So you're technically going to be getting value based off of that. We'll see where ownership lands, and that's the important thing with it. But I thought there was a ton of value to consider. Probably in the 7s, though, like my 2 favorite values would be Cole and Griffin. I think those 2 guys have legitimate win equity at a price tag that you could argue should be hundreds, if not $1,000 more expensive.
Yeah, I agree. And the pricing is so soft this week, you can really just go, all the way across the board and kind of just pick your poison. I love Victor Perez this week, right off a great performance at the Paris Olympics at 72. For GPPs, if you're looking to sprinkle someone in who's got incredible upside, Jake Knapp, $7,000. Don't think he's a safe option. He's not at all, but he can ball out when he does. I love what he's up to lately. And then Chan Kim is popping up for me a little bit. Easy golf courses, Chan Kim thrives. And we're going to be needing some low scores this week, and I think Chan's your guy in that department. Some Chandler Phillips right after Chan Kim. I think at $6,700 as well. He provides a bit more safety than you want from upside there, which is totally fine at $6,700. You're looking to get them across the finish line there. And then Spence, Alejandro Tosti, $6,400. He just doesn't seem like he fits any kind of golf course, but yet he does his thing. Now, it's going to be a roller coaster as well. The Argentinian roller coaster is so different to Jordan Spieth's roller coaster. So I think we'll see what we get up to with Toasty, but those are some options I'm in the mood for. I'm sure we can update everyone else with other shows we'll get up to this week, but we have a nice guest on here that's incredible at betting and finding value. And I think we want to just pick his brain just a little bit more for the last 8-7
Spence, I will just say real quick, I like JJ Spawn this week too.
Yeah. Ooh. Yeah. He's starting to find some form as well, man. And nice little course fit as well too. So we'll see what he can get up to. But JT, so we got through our top 10 rankings there. You mentioned that you're going to be betting a few guys. Do you want to keep it for your article that you're going to be releasing potentially, or do you want to share some guys late into the show? Not too many people have made it here with us, so we try and incentivize some people to listen to get our picks. So do you have any outrights or bets that you've placed that you haven't shared with us yet?
I don't mind sharing at all. So I've already locked in Billy Ho and Højgaard. I loved seeing the way Højgaard played, and I think at 50-1, I mean, like, I don't expect too much movement on him, but I wouldn't surprise if he moves like 48 or 47 or something like that. So I just locked in the 50. Billy Ho, I don't feel comfortable taking Sungjae this week just for the fact of, so the guy storms onto the scene in 2019, and he's still one of the best golfers in the world, and he is a fantastic course fit here. But historically, when he's came in as like that number one guy or like one of the top 3 guys, he just doesn't do it.
Finishes
So
third, you know.
I think, I mean, it's like looking at like a college football team when you're like, okay, like you expect Ohio State to go 10-2 this year, and if they don't make a bowl game, it's a bust. Well, if Sungjae isn't in contention on the back nine on Sunday, I think it's a bad week for him. But I still don't know if he does it. So at the number he's at, I'm off it. I wouldn't be surprised if he does it, though. I do think I will flirt with Kuchar just at the price because it's fun, $20. I mean, something basic. I think it's a fun one. And then some of the other guys I spoke of, I'll probably land at 3 or 4 outrights this week. I haven't decided what the other 2 will be. Looking at Ben Griffin, looking at Jordan Spieth, but I'll also be looking at finishing positions for all of those guys, especially those guys that we were talking about who like need to like Jordan really needs a top 20 to help get him to the BMW. Even better is more. So guys like that are the guys I'll be looking at for finishing positions. Outside of my top 10, I haven't looked too much into what I'm going to be wagering this week, but I already have Billy Ho and Højgaard locked in.
I am right there with you on Billy Ho. I'll rattle off mine, and then Spence can give his. I've got Akshay at 45. I think that's 35 now. Cameron Davis, 45. Victor Perez at 80. Just kind of ride that steam. And then Taylor Moore at 90 as well. He's played great golf at this venue. He's the bane of my existence. He was the guy that won the Valspar when I was on Spieth. And I think Spencer always has the guy that beats my guy out. He had Taylor Moore at the Valspar, and Spieth was like, he showed us who Spieth's become at that tournament. And I've never bet him outright since because he was going to win that thing. And then Taylor Moore just out of the trees like Tarzan just showed up. So those are my 5 guys that I have. I think I have space for a 30 if I want, but I might just kind of leave it at that for now. I'm really confident in the Billy Hall short play. So Spence, what's going on in your betting pocket at the moment?
I have a little bit more exposure than I was expecting to take on. I ended up betting Sungjae. I got him at 17-1. There is a different value between the 17s and the 14s that you're going to find at most places now. I don't even necessarily think that what JT said is incorrect in any semblance of the word. Like, nobody burns an industry worse than Sungjae usually burns an industry in this.
Or Russell Henley.
Yeah, I guess that would be the other one. But there's a lot that I liked about Sungjae. There were 7 categories that I ran this week for a top 10 grade. Sungjae was inside of the top 10 of all those areas there. Really safe profile with upside built into it. I had a proper price at 13.5-1. So maybe I'm a little bit more aggressive than the market there seems to be, but I thought it was a really good price at 17. And then unfortunately on a lot of these other numbers, like I got the best of it earlier today and these prices have shifted. I got Bezadenhout at 45. I got Eric Cole at 70. I got Harman at 40. And then my long shot was Ben Silverman at 175.
Spence, I will say real quick too, just because all the guys that you've taken, I mean, I think you just listed 5 guys and 3 of them were in my top 10. So Cole and the other guy, Harman. Harman is just, if his wedges are on, I will always trust his putter. I like that a lot. I did just want to say something about Sungjae. Just because I don't want to take him doesn't mean that he's got top 12 finishes in 7 of his last 9 starts, 3 top 10 finishes in 5 starts here. He putts well in Bermuda, and he's 3rd in birdie or better percentage across the last 24 rounds relative to the field. Like you said, he's in a lot of those top categories, and like it's there for him on the platter. So if he does it, I won't be surprised. I just may not be there to celebrate with him.
I just want to say one thing to that, Byron, before we move on, and I'll let you take us out of the show after this, because I really like the point that JT just brought up. Like, at the end of the day, it's all about value. Where do you have your value? Because the only thing that matters is value. You can really like a golfer. You can really like a player. You can think that the golfer has a chance to win the golf tournament. But if there's not value on the number, either according to your model, according to your projections, according to the way that you're building things, the way that you're looking at things, then there's not a value to make the bet. It's a lot different when we're talking, like for DraftKings, we can discuss ownership. Do you have value in what the ownership percentage is? Do you have value on the price tag? For betting, if you do not have value on the outright ticket, you unfortunately do not have an outright ticket that should be getting made. So, there are a lot of golfers in this field that I really like this week. And I unfortunately just didn't end up with an outright ticket on them for one reason or another that I'm not going to be shocked if they win. I think that's like the most important thing, though, just to remember is that you can't bet everybody, regardless of what some people in the space might make you believe that you can do with it. But at the end of the day, you have to build a systematic card. And in order to build a systematic card, you have to figure out how much exposure you're willing to get down, how much you're betting to win. It doesn't need to be the same every week. Value is going to make the difference, but you're never going to be in a spot in it. Like none of us are ever going to be in a spot where we have 15 names that we're betting. We're going to have to make really tough decisions. And there are players for me, the Ben Griffins, the Aaron Rise, the JJ Spawns that unfortunately just didn't make my card. I went aggressive at the top with Sungjae. I added a 40-1 Harmon. And I mean, really, there's not much else I can do after that. Like my decision has already been made for me. So just keep that in mind, I guess. That would be like my last closing note there.
Yeah. And we're chatting about Sanjay. He's finished inside the top 20, 56% of his starts. And that's been a lot of signature events, a lot of big boy events. This is a venue that doesn't have the best field, and it's a venue he's thrived at. He's 100 minus 110 for a top 20 right now. That's a 52% implied probability. If you don't have exposure to Sanjay, I will be betting him top 20 at minus 110. It seems like a great bet. He can do the dumb shit he does when he's in contention and still kind of capitalize on what he gets up to. Hopefully he wins for Spence. Hopefully my guys take care of business. Hopefully JT's guys take care of business. It's going to be Billy Horsham for us there too. So awesome stuff. JT, thanks for coming on, man. It was awesome meeting you. Awesome chatting to you. Tell the people what's up in JT's world, man.
Yeah, no, I look forward to coming back. I know me and you have been talking about getting me on here for kind of near a month now. When we started talking, was just right in the heart of some stuff that you already had planned. But I know we talked about getting together throughout the FedEx Cup playoffs, and hopefully we roll that into a fresh new year. I like getting on here and talking golf with guys who know it. So it's a lot of fun. Obviously, we're nearing the end of the golf season. But the wonderful thing about this sport that we all love is that we don't get a long break. I mean, we got football and baseball playoffs is a lot of fun, but, you know, you turn right around to the CJ Cup and you turn right around to all those fun tournaments early on in the year. And, you know, a lot of people think that golf starts around the Masters, or you could say the Players, but for all the true junkies out there, like us three, it starts a lot earlier. So I think it's been a really fun season of betting golf, and I'm really looking forward to the next one.
Let's go, dude. As always, check out JT stuff at OddsCheck. He's got you for all sorts of sports, and he's Ricky Bobby Bets is a great account to follow. Tons and tons of fun, great content out there. Winning bets as well, of course. So, Spence, what's cooking for the rest of the week for you?
We will have a lot of content here at Rotoballer to touch on the point that JT just said. Like these, to me, I've been providing content since the beginning of 2018. I think I might still be on the first season. Like, I don't know. Everything feels like one big year over the last 7 years. This has just been, you know, from tournament to tournament we go, and there's a certain strategy that is built, and there's a way to try to increase your ROI and increase your bankroll through everything that you're doing. And, you know, I used the word earlier. It's a very systematic approach that all three of us are taking. Like we're all trying to find value. We're all in this game together of trying to beat the sports book. We go about it different ways with it. I think JT's answer of a placement market as a top 40 is one of the best bets you can make on the board. Like that, to me, it's matchups is my bread and butter, but top 40 bets are the 1B to what place or to matchups are. So, you know, find your niche, find where you have value, find where the sections that you are able to build your bankroll. And you and I have talked about this, Byron. There's, you know, whether it's within, I have a tracking data sheet. I know that there's other things out there that you can track. Like, make sure that you are tracking markets, because you'll get a really good indication. Like, figure out how you're doing on in-tournament bets. Figure out how you're doing on outrights. You can start getting an understanding of where your weak spots are. And then based off of those, you either, one, need to figure out if you're running worse than you think you should be, or you're running better than you should be based off of certain results. And if that's not the answer, like, let's figure out what the correction is based off of that, and where can we improve and be in the markets that we can find value.
Spence, that was great. I love you. I love your brain. I love your stuff. JT, thank you so much for coming on. Guys, hit the like button on the way out. Use code TOF, use code Maniac over at rotoballer.com. For Darbo doing the shots for options and Discord, we have got tons of options for you at Rotoballer in our Discord. So please go and check that out as well. Got tons of tools, got all our stuff, all our articles, free, premium, all that jazz. We've got it everything for you over there at rotoballer.com. This was the Rotoballer Show, the Rotoballer PGA Show, and we will be back for next week's playoffs, and we'll catch you guys in Memphis.